Well, I'm Dexington with my co host, the hot dogger Dan himself, and we have our special guest today in Void. Um, introduce yourselves, guys.
Hello, I am Hot Dogger or Dan, the right Dan.
Yo, I'm Void. Thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.
This is our first podcast, so there's going to be tons of issues. I'm sure audio will be terrible. You can leave all the comments down there, and we'll probably read them, or not. We'll see.
I won't.
I figured.
I can get to read them or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so let's start out with our guest, Void. Um, let's hear a little bit about your City of Heroes history.
Well, I started City of Heroes back in issue 7. My first tune was a Ninja Blade Ninjutsu Stalker, and been playing on and off ever since.
What
What?
got you into PvP?
Oh,
Well, I didn't originally know that the game actually had PvP, but around level like 15, 16-ish, back then a NPC would direct you to talk to like the PvP contact. So I was sent to like the Bloody Bay contact, and I went into the zone, and then there were a bunch of people in there, and I was like, oh, those are real people, and that's how it started.
wait, what? What issue was that? When did you? What issue did you join?
That was 2016, I believe. That no, 2006. Yeah, Destiny Manifest issue 7. Let me look that up. Yeah, so it was around August 2006.
Okay, and you played on back in the old ladders, and whatnot, correct?
Correct. So I was originally on Champion, and that's where I joined the villains of Rogue Island, also known as Vori, and we competed on the villain test ladder.
Now, did you come back for any of the leagues that we had on live, or is this your first return back on Homecoming?
So after issue 13 dropped, there was like a big exodus of PvP players, and the rest of the PvPers on Champion that did leave the game went to Freedom, and I casually PvP in RV as well as doing kickball. Around the time that the leagues started kicking off, I was actually living in Japan at the time, so my availability was like non-existent, and I was never able to participate in any of those leagues. So coming back now, this is like my first opportunity to do organized PvP.
Gotcha. Dan, tell us a little about what got you into it and when you came in PvP and whatnot.
I have zero experience. No, I was a role player from 2010 until now. I was a part of the a server that existed for a while that no one knew. And while I was on there, I was recruited by Vinny and Dr. Tomato and the Lib into doing some PvP. So I had rolled a first I rolled a Mind Fire Dominator and I hated it. And then I rolled an Ice Regen Sentinel by the name of Hot Dog. Well, actually, it was Cleekborn, but I changed it to Hot Dog. And yeah, I enjoyed it. And then when Resurgence came out, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna focus on some more role. And then I was like, you know what, I want to do role play or PvP again. And so I wrote up Hot Dogger again. Slowly made more characters.
And obviously won the 2v2 tournament by yourself in your
I
initial
had
upcoming.
won the 2v2 tournament by myself. I had no help. It was a really tough battle. But you know, if I did have help, I would expect it to be if I had to like characterize it by like a nationality, it would be something in the like the United Kingdom, Britain. It's just how I feel.
I mean, that's a pretty strong and impressive introduction to the PvP scene, coming out and winning a tournament like that. So, congrats to you.
Yeah, congrats. I remember that tournament. I had done like 5 rounds on my stalker before getting paired off with another stalker, and it's just all going downhill from there.
I think I was actually worried about fighting you too, because I knew you were a really good stalker, and I was like, man, I really don't want to go against Void because he was gonna like kick my ass. I don't remember who I went up against. I mean, I know Ziggy was like the last match, but
No one good enough to beat you, that's for sure.
yeah, hand tied behind.
Yeah, my final match ended up being against I think HP and Nogio, and it ended up going to sudden death. And for that tournament, the way to decide sudden death was the ski slopes.
Yep.
That's how we're
I think
gonna
we all
conclude
miss
this
Scylla.
podcast.
We are here. um, I myself, I didn't start playing City Heroes until issue 14. Um, so my first character was with the introduction of AE. So I made a Firekin, was level 50 within like 9 hours, 8 or 9 times, something like that. And I just like farmed up, got into PVE, and then I was with a pretty good group of PVEers at the time. You know, speed running, STFs, things like that, which I thoroughly enjoyed. But like I needed more. And one of the guys in the group, I believe his name was Whitaker. He told me, hey, well, try out PvP, and he's like, yeah, you either go like Fire EM or Sonic EM, and I went Sonic and showed up to kickballs as they were just getting started on the Freedom Leagues there and whatnot. Um, and people thought I was decent. So then I became friends with like Sillet and like Vex and whatnot. Just the group that was around back then. Played with Pout, SMD. Um, we went over to Champion with the Brazil BR Matadors. Uh, Played for Ware, and now I'm on Rare, and we're back here on a Homecoming. So I figured now that we've done, the history, let's get into like the best topic, uh, the state of scrims. Um, and luckily we've got Void here, who happens to be on Bori, that scrims everyone. Um, 4 days a week of scrims, so it'll be great to get an overview as well as a little bit more detailed into the teams that Dan and I don't have as much experience playing against. So, what's your overall opinion of where scrims are at right now, Boyd?
I definitely feel that other teams need to start scrimming each other. Definitely understand that availability is the biggest factor in a lot of these things. However, there are a bunch of matchups that the PvP community hasn't seen yet, whether that's Rare against TBD, Rare against Renegades, TBD against Rare and Renegades, or Incursion, I should say. So there's definitely a bunch of matchups that I would like to see explored because each team has like their unique thing that they do, and it would be interesting to see how those things play out against each other. Whether it's the Earthfire lineup versus TBD's all offense lineup, or Incursion's new Beam lineup against Renegades like Taunt lineup or something like that.
Speaking of lineups, do you yourself have a preferred lineup you like playing, or alternatively, do you have one that you hate playing against?
As far as preference, I'm pretty flexible with what role I'm playing because I am considered probably just the most. I consider myself the most expendable player in Bori. I don't really have a defined role in the sense that like they need me on offense or they need me on support. I can just kind of float wherever they need me. So whether I'm on Kin in the Mastermind lineup or just another Beam on the Beam lineup, really doesn't matter too much to me. Again, when it comes to lineups I hate playing against, I definitely hate going against the double like Taunter lineup that that Renegades does, just because it's annoying having to like constantly break line of sight just to get out of taunt. But otherwise, that's the most annoying thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It'd be good to get to see more of the matchups and whatnot of who's facing. You know, get to see how each team stacks up against each other.
What in tarnation is going on here?
Well, we're currently in the middle of a podcast, so welcome to a surprise guest of Dr. Tomato himself. Sillet, how's it going?
Oh, hi.
So, do you want to introduce yourself to the audience by giving us a little history of yourself in City of Heroes and your PvP experience? I think everybody would really appreciate that.
Yeah, I PvP'd a little bit on live, and I PvP'd a little bit on this new server, and I'm the PvP community.
Just
That's about it.
just for record, Sillet is also Dr. Tomato, in case anyone was confused.
Let the record show.
Let the record show.
Hey, we were just talking about we're on the state of scrims right now, and trying to just get our opinions out there on where we're at and what we'd like to see. I know you haven't been around for a lot of the scrims lately, but is there anything you in particular would like to see the scrims move towards or something of that nature?
Can't really speak on that because, I've been gone for like 3 months now. But I mean, I'd like to see people step up and make teams out of the people that aren't on teams.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there's definitely a lot of people that aren't on teams, but they don't have quite the availability or the experience. It's something I was actually considering. Um, I mean, right now we don't have a league or a ladder formed, so there's really nothing stopping people from stepping up and just making basically a scrim team that isn't part of their main team, but you know, Lib and I could go like try to get new people involved or whatnot, and just kind of coach them up if we wanted to, something of that nature.
Yeah, or even just pug scrims if people are familiar with that.
Yeah.
For those who aren't, it's just like when you grab a group of people together who aren't necessarily on the same team and you go play against actual.
I feel like a lot of the scrims have been pug scrims, essentially, with how many ringers people have needed over the last few weeks. I think every team stands to do good from recruiting, 2 or 3 players at this point.
Yeah, that's for sure. Rare is definitely one of those ones that have had to run with ringers lately in our scrims, and it's just it's not a pleasant experience for us. So refilling the roster or rescheduling our times to actually fit our schedules is kind of where we're at. Um, but I don't know what everyone else is at. I know we're definitely still looking for quality players, but I haven't seen many other teams really actively recruiting.
I think it's going on probably while not in the open. Like there are backdoor deals being worked or whatever with getting people in the mix and PvPing in a competitive setting.
I heard Frost Markins was thinking of making a team.
I heard Frost Markins was looking for a team. I don't know if he was able to find one, but if I do feel that it would probably be better for him to just get picked up by a team than trying to start his own. But it's up to him what he wants to do.
I mean, I know most of us on this team are happy to help with any kind of information that a new player might need. If you just need builds, or you need advice on lineups or different strategies. I mean, Lib has been helping every team from our own Vori, Incursion, like you name it. He's helping people out. So if someone does decide to take that step forward and create a team, we'll be there to help you out. So not something that you should be afraid to go out there and do, as long as you have the time and the management ability. It should be great.
Piggybacking off of that, even if there's someone who wants to submit a VOD, because I know Dex, you like to review VODs and give pointers and tips. That's also helpful and goes a long way.
Yeah, for those that don't know, if you're interested in getting, just some pointers, just, record yourself, send the video to me, and I'll take a look at it and see if there's anything that I can give pointers on, be it, something small like the way that you toggle up your powers or something like that to something, big. If I can help you, I'd be happy to do it. Uh, gonna try something new with one of the VOD reviews and actually like record over it and pause the video and things like that. Um, but yeah, if you're looking for pointers, I mean, I'm I may not be better than you, but I might be able to pick something out that I can that you can do better. So it's definitely out there.
But going back to your original question of like the state of scrims, we talked about seeing more diverse matchups. It is interesting to see just within the last few, what is it, just been a couple months now that scrim started, like how much scrims have evolved. Back when we first started scrimming, I think Rare was the only team at the time to actually have like a cohesive lineup. A bunch of people that had Psy Plant Blasters or Psy TA Blasters, Emps, and the other teams just had kind of hodgepodge lineups of different kind of blasters, different kind of corruptors. This is back before the AT limit, which I guess we can get into in a little bit of how that affected scrims. BP, he can, talk on that as well because he was there with me when we were trying to develop like the hodgepodge lineup in Mori before we all got on the same page of side blasters and then beam blasters. So now that all the teams are kind of like on the same page, and then it was just interesting seeing that develop from the base of everybody running like side plant lineups to Vori running masterminds to Rare running Earthfires to Incursion running their like hybrid Dom blaster line, Renegades with their Martial blasters. It's definitely been interesting seeing all those things develop.
Yeah, I'd actually like to look at it like each team individually and just kind of go through like the kind of the progression that we've seen. I mean, personally, we've scrimmed every week, Vori and Incursion, so like that's what I know the most about. Um, like when we started against Vori, you guys were in your infancy trying to set up a lineup and whatnot. Um, but you guys have progressed so far now. It's really great to see the progress that you guys have made and your night and day difference between the team that you were, and especially so with your evolution into the beam lineup. That seems to be where your guys' bread and butter is. I hope that your Sentinel lineup has been retired forever.
Don't count it out yet. It's a missing puzzle piece. We don't know what it is yet, but maybe one day we'll find it. But I do agree with you. Vori originally was a villain ladder team, so villain ladder PvP was a lot different than I think the jump team PvP of like the hero ladder. So having a bunch of players that had never played like hero style PvP, I should say, uh, practice and train on that and adapt to that has definitely been interesting.
Do you miss the villain or hero ladder? I mean, I don't know if you did the hero ladder.
I did not do the hero ladder. Villain ladder was interesting. I did miss it. Back then, my computer was not like by any means the best. I think I had like a computer with a 20 gig hard drive, that had 512 megabytes of RAM, and it was an IBM like onboard graphics card. It was pretty garbage. So back then, like it would be like a team with three masterminds versus a team with another three masterminds on cargo or lab or something like that. Just pets all over the place. Mez would be perma-cage in a corner somewhere. I would be trying to like AS people through like 100 pets. So it was fun. It was chaotic, but it was definitely fun, and I do miss it a little bit.
Sounds awful to me.
It was different.
No, but I mean, even your guys' mastermind lineups have gotten better, but so has everyone playing against masterminds because a little bit of practice against them goes a long way. Um, the the learning to target against them, once you get that down, it's just like facing any other lineup.
Yeah, that's true.
But
I still don't like going against.
you'll get there. Don't worry. But right now, like you guys are so much stronger when you're running a jump team that I can't imagine doing the masterminds for anything other than just the fact that you guys have fun doing it. I know Mez absolutely loves it, so I get it.
I think we definitely do have fun doing it, and we have, I would say, all the best mastermind players currently PvPing with Pub and Bolin and Mez just being super experienced mastermind players. There have been other teams that have tried to run masterminds occasionally to varying degrees of success. It just ends up them, trying to like fight club, Mez or Pub, like in the corner of the map somewhere, while the rest of the team does like a separate match elsewhere.
Yeah,
Let's talk about incursion because I would love to talk about incursion.
Right, let's talk about it.
So incursion started out like they were playing just before we implemented like the AT limit. They didn't have they were still running devastation procs in their builds. They swapped over their builds and then they had more damage output, so they became a far more competitive team after that. And then is when we switched to like beams, and they were trying to experiment. They ended up running the bringing out the DOMs like in with beams. Just like they couldn't fit in the AT limits at the beginning because they didn't have the characters. Like they were a little bit sluggish with that. But then as soon as they could catch up to like where the meta was, that team is just flourishing. They're doing phenomenal. Their spikes are just so deadly, and this is talking about the most recent week even. They've gotten even progressively better because they switched over to beams from like a hodgepodge of like earth fire plus psi damage, and they still have another step that they can make forward if they remove char from their attack chain, do snipe into lancer shot into spirit shark jaws, or the tier 2 attack, one of those type of things.
Yeah, char with beam doesn't really go.
Yeah, the it's but they're getting that damage out there. They're putting up 20 kills plus on everyone on any of the teams. um, and they took what 2 of 5 games from you this week. What?
They did, yeah.
Do we have a
So
roster list for them?
No team has rosters besides for Rare and Mori.
Well, doesn't Ziggy have like a roster list somewhere?
I think he has like a his suspected this is who's on.
But as far as their roster, just running down the people from the top of my head, Arctic, Gunrock, Exit, what was it? Palau,
Yeah, that's Hinden. Rick
Hinden,
James.
Rick James.
All right, so Arctic and Gunrock I actually always thought were like really underrated on live. Rick was pretty underrated too, honestly. Hinden was fairly solid on him, if I remember. I don't know too many of these other people.
I knew Arctic from Champion. He was one of like the zone PvPers there that started progressing into arena PvP along with another PvPer named Ash. I did know of Gunrock. I didn't really play with him though. One of the people that I've been seeing do really well recently though is Exit. I think he's like a really solid player on their line.
So I used to play with Exit. He was on my team in like the first Freedom PvP League, and
Yeah, I know Exit.
him right now he's playing like a monster. I've just loved watching him play because I've been watching like all of the scrims, and he was just securing all the kills, top of the leaderboard every time. And I mean,
Yeah,
you can only put so much weight into like a kill count, um, but when it's a consistent thing, that shows that you're on targets a large percentage of the time. If it's a one-off kind of thing, whatever, you got the last hits, but he's there, he's on the targets, he's making huge impacts, like extremely huge. Like let's for a second talk about the second game they took off you. So Vori decided to run 2 people roguing naps, and I didn't know how Incursion was going to adapt to it because there's definitely a lot of ways to play it. So what I saw them do was they targeted the rogues, particularly Mez, early on, and ran him like completely out of greens, and then they switched exit onto like roguing him. So Mez was having to switch into PFF and was, dragged out of place because the Emp's able to roam all over. He doesn't have to be where your offense is. And that makes it so your Emps are pulled off of the spike target in order to heal the person you have roguing. And I thought that their adaptation was just absolutely wonderful. And it brought them a win.
If they won that, that's actually kind of interesting too, because I mean you're basically just canceling it out at that point. So you're canceling out the roguers, right, with your own roguer.
Not so
Which,
much. It's not like a one for one because the roguer, the team that has the Emp being rogued, that sets
yeah,
a roguer
you're
onto the other
better
one.
off roguing roguer than roguing.
Yes, because you're pulling two people out of position in that situation because that Emp has to come heal that person, then they're not going to be healing the actual spike target. Whereas like the Emp doesn't have to heal himself. Like yeah, he needs to get like heals and whatnot, and he can just play evasive like Emps normally do in between spikes.
Well, the person who's like roguing the Emps and then getting rogued too can't continue to rogue the Emps once he's getting rogued. So at that point, you're actually just down a person. But
Yep.
well, not really down a person, but you're down that person doing like the other person who's quote unquote canceling you out. The other person roguing you is causing something to happen, whereas you're just getting rogued and not doing anything. So it's not like a net even trade, but it's kind of interesting that like the idea is that you're kind of going for like a quick counter cancel out, and like the roguers could either start roguing each other or stop roguing there. So that's just kind of interesting how that played out then, and like one team actually won off of it because it kind of means they sort of like they just outplayed the other team actually at that point.
I mean, it was for experimenting, so
Yeah, and that's that's what scrims are for, just to experiment, try different things, and that's something that we wanted to try. Looking back at it, I think we all agreed that we could have played that several different ways, as far as like the lineups of the sub teams or the strategies when it came to like who to attack, not to attack, or just straight up splitting it to like a more traditional dual spike type of a setup.
Yeah,
but
pull your roguer off the Emps, and then like
yeah,
then they have a roguer not really doing much, and then you guys don't. So it's kind
like
of the
towards the end when we did like consolidate the two sub teams and went back to like a traditional offense, like we did go on a little bit on a roll. Not enough to catch up, but we definitely like just played to our strengths at that point.
Arctic's actually like pretty analytical too, which I think a lot of people don't really know because I mean Incursion. Maybe I'm wrong in this just because like I've been away, but it seems like they're kind of like sort of like them and Renegades kind of seem to keep to themselves a little bit more than like TBD or Vori does.
yeah. I mean, Arctic and Gunrock don't really show up to kickballs, things like that. But I think a lot of us actually have a pretty good relationship with them. I mean, I've always had a lot of respect for Arctic, um, and every once in a while, like we've had brief communications. I know Lib talks to him and Ziggy talks to him. Um, we adore that team. Uh, just like they were one of the first people that wanted to scrim with us. They've been consistent. They're willing to learn. And like you said, Arctic is very analytical, and we'll we're happy to help them out in any way that we possibly can. Not that they need our help, but they're growing leaps and bounds. Like their progression is just so much faster than everyone else that I've personally seen.
Yeah, and I mean Gunrock was like, as I remember, he was like a pretty good leader on Exile too, and they had like a pretty good team dynamic going on, and like I mean, I remember him being like pretty mechanically decent, like pretty good mechanically, and then I know he did duels a lot, which we memed about, but I mean that makes you pretty self-reliant typically, in those matches. I don't know how he's been playing because I haven't seen him, but like I would imagine that he doesn't. Somebody, it's kind of like a Spiner or somebody like that, where like you just kind of get used to. He was a duelist, so if you don't get heals one spike or something, it's like okay, like I'm not really used to having that anyway. So
Well, he's got a very big role in that group. As the target caller, as
Definitely.
the offense. He was running the dom. He's now running the nature, right? I think
He was
he's
also
running
like in
nature.
charge of like making their builds and whatnot as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, top to bottom, they've all been improving, and and they're a force to be reckoned with. I can't wait to see them scrim up against, um, TBD and
TBD or
Renegades.
Renegades, yeah, for sure. Like they are all genuinely bought into their team and getting better in PvP. One of the big examples of that was when both Arctic and Gunrock wasn't able to make a scrim, and they had unofficially canceled the scrim, and the rest of the team went on to scrim anyways, just like informally. That to me just showed like how invested the rest of the team was in improving themselves and getting better.
Oh yeah,
They
and
got some experienced people on the team too. I mean, like Rick and like Exit have
absolutely.
been on like a bunch of teams, and they kind of know how to like step up and do a scrim or something. If you Hendon, I'm assuming same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Rick is like a phenomenal person to have on your team for that. Like he's very communicative
he
with
works really
other
hard.
teams. Yeah, and he's happy
Yeah,
to
he's got
step
to
up when you
communicate
need.
with other teams.
He comes to every scrim, just in case somebody needs a ringer or just to watch and observe and learn. So a lot of props to Rick James for like how invested he is in like his personal development.
And
You
Like,
can get so good ringing.
yeah, oh yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, you're just exposed to like so many different things, just play styles, communication, tactics, all those different things.
Especially
Like,
on NEMP, like getting to see
especially
how other teams are, evading and different communications, just things like that. Like that seems to be like a huge benefit for them.
yeah, like where when Vori benefited from you know consistently scripting rare, which everybody agreed was a top team. So we were able to improve ourselves a lot just by giving ourselves that level of competition. Encourage to take that to the next level by scripting rare and Vori, so they're just getting like twice as much out of it.
Yeah, I mean, when you get used to playing somebody who like punishes you for making mistakes or whatever, I mean, like once you play a team that doesn't do that, like you can basically just you do whatever you want. And you can still win because you don't really get you just don't get punished for it as hard like playing somebody else. So it makes you a lot better. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's theories behind like number one practicing versus number two, and how number two gets like a huge benefit while number one doesn't really see as much from it. Um, that principle goes kind of down the line, but it's all in how you see scrims. If you take scrims as uh, just uh, a chance to get a win. Like if all you care about is winning in it, you're not going to get as much from it as a team that comes into it not really worried about the result, but worried about actually practicing something. Working
Right.
towards a goal. And I believe Incursion is that team. Like they can take devastating losses and just roll with the punches because they know that they're getting better, that they're working towards something. And if there ever was an official league or ladder or just tournament, um, then they're going to go for a win, and they'll stop at all costs. It'll definitely pay off in the long run.
I was gonna say both versus Vori and Rare. At the end of every scrim, they are super polite and super ready to play each other the next.
Yeah, they've just been absolutely wonderful guys so far.
Yeah,
Couldn't be more happy about that.
Yeah, for a team that did have so much issues getting off the ground with just manning their roster and finding scrim time, yeah, they've grown exponentially. Really good to see
Well,
that.
they came in late too. They came in like late, and they weren't really at kickballs. They're kind of like behind everybody else, like meta wise too, just in terms of knowledge. Which is that's really the benefit of number one. You talk about like number one playing against number two is number one, and unless it's just like a bunch of meatheads who have like really good reflexes or something. Like if it's actually people who like understand the game, their benefit for the most part isn't just playing the other team. It's more like being ahead of the other team. So it's like if the other team does something that actually starts being effective, usually that number one team has like 3 or 4 things in their pocket they can do that they've already talked about that just because they're the ones kind of driving like the
Driving the meta.
trends, yeah. which on this server, I don't. We'll see how long that even lasts because, like I said, it's been very accelerated in terms of teams getting better and like progression here.
Right, and
And-
that just goes to like things like how many debuffers to run, whether it was like 2 natures and a poison down to just like 1 poison now, with the Emps lineup with going from the Emp water to Emp ice or to the gravity, just like seeing that evolution as well.
With all the calculators, it's like less subjective now too. Because like before, it was like you had to get like a bunch of people in an arena match. All right, let's test this thing out. Like it was just kind of like a lot of theory, and like now it's like you can just plug some numbers in and be like, oh, okay, yeah, actually, no, it's like mathematically better to run this than that. Which doesn't always translate to it being better, but I mean, before we didn't really have those resources. Now it's a lot easier to see what's actually like beneficial and what's placebo.
Yeah, shout out to Malix for all the things he's done for creating calculators and whatnot to
And HP
help.
as well.
HP
shout
doesn't
out
have a
to-
calculator.
Shout outs to Lib for like testing every single power in the game on the test server.
Yeah, many don't know that, but yeah, Lib went through and tested like all the changes that they made. So huge thank you to Lib.
But it's my hero. Every time I wanted to test everything, like anything at all, like he was always the one I went to because he would usually just be like, "Yeah, like once I'm done smoking this like beef or whatever, I'll be done." It's always down to test stuff. Which, as a team, honestly, like when you talk about teams getting better too, that's kind of the mentality you need to have. Like if you actually want to get better, you just have to be down to like test stuff and review stuff and think about.
Yeah, that goes back to like the age-old argument of like what trumps what, like talent versus hard work or hard work versus talent. But if you have like a bunch of hardworking, talented people, like you get some crazy results. And Lib is definitely one of those like hardworking, talented people where like he's good at the game, but he works just as hard, coming up with better things.
Yeah, and I'd just like to mention that while we were using a number 1 and number 2, no one was saying anyone is clear, best team or second best team or anything like that. Obviously, everything is completely subjective at this point, as we've had no league or ladder or tournament really.
Speaking of other teams, I know we talked about Incursion, but we've definitely seen a lot of changes in lineups with Renegades and TBD as well, and what they were running to what they're running now.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what your take is.
TBD is an interesting one too.
On Renegades. Let's go there first, and then we can go to TBD because we haven't, had the fortune to get to scrim them. So what's your thoughts on them?
So when we first started scrimming Renegades, they had their brute lineup. They came out the gate a lot, very competitive, and so we had to adapt to their playstyle compared to how Rare ran their lineups, because Rare is just like they do the fundamentals very well of being a very solid, fundamentally sound jump team, whereas Renegades wanted to do more unorthodox things with like their martial blasters. They're running stalkers in most of their lineups as well, or they'll try to like fit in their stalkers because they do have 2 very solid stalkers in Maximum and Kurgan. So they wanted those guys to play to their strengths by running them on stalkers. And with those web nades that those brutes or those tanks like pump out, they can get those greater side blades in. And Malix, having Malix on their team as a resource when it comes to like build making and number crunching has been really solid to them. And they do have Max Skull as well, and I do feel like Max Skull is just one of their most solid players on offense and on support.
I would go as far as to say that Max Skull is the most valuable player to his team out of every single person in this league. That man has a giant backpack, and he can carry a ton of people. He is just such a phenomenal player right now, and it pains me to see him on M when I saw just how much impact he had as like a target caller. That man was just killing it. Especially like even just in kickballs. As a target caller on his nature, oh my gosh, he's just absolutely phenomenal player. Um, I'd love to see them, either pick up like another emp that can take that spot and move him back into that offensive role. Um, just because, I mean, obviously I haven't played against them, but I have watched their scrims, and when they have him in that position, he's such an impactful player. Um, Whereas, like, obviously he's a great amp, but I think he has a bigger impact if he can be the shot caller, that lead offensive role, and just guide that entire team.
I would agree with that, definitely.
And obviously Malik's doing great things. They seem to be trying a lot of different things to figure out, where their strongest setup is. So I think if they can get a few more scrim nights in, um, they'll reach that progression point where they skyrocket and take off. Because I mean they're already taking games off of TBD and whatnot. Have they taken games off of Ori yet?
A couple here and there.
Yeah, like we're at a point where any team in this scrim era can take a game off of anyone else, which like just shows just how close like the skill gap is. Um, there's no one that's untouchable.
Except the 2v2 champ.
It's true.
It's true.
You can't beat that.
No BP, non MJB.
We don't say that name around here.
He's never won a 2v2 tournament.
He's never won any tournament,
Any tournament, really.
Yeah.
especially
Just
not
gets
all of
carried.
them.
He just gets carried.
BJM has won, but not MJB.
Though there was once a team in one of the tournaments that had what Unholy, Ziggy, MJB, and Void.
We do not talk about tournament.
You guys don't
That
talk
tournament
about
never
that?
happened. That tournament never happened.
I mean, that's just such a stacked lineup. I mean, you
If
definitely
we
would
want
have
to talk
to win.
about the tournament, we're gonna have to talk about General No.
That guy was obviously the breakout performer of that tournament. But you'd think with a team that stacked, four incredible players, they would win more than one game.
They got two, but yeah.
We'll
Looking at
say
this
that.
Renegades roster, though, I'm actually just not surprised these people ended up on the same team. Just personality-wise, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and, speaking of personality, they have all been absolutely wonderful people to, talk to, hang out with, play kickball with. Love the Renegades. They're good dudes.
Yeah.
Every team has like their unique culture and personalities.
Yeah, I mean, like,
There's a lot of people on this team, like a lot of people who are like valuing math a lot. I mean, like Silent Method, he obviously thinks a lot about shit. He definitely he's down to crunch some numbers. Max Goal, no exception there. I mean, Malik's obviously barriers always like been into kind of like some like out there kind of theory stuff, and so have like the rest of like the old Renegades people, and in some ways, it kind of like run some like non-meta stuff, or at least they like doing it. So yeah, there's like a definite meshing going on there.
oh yeah. I mean, those old Renegades guys, like Max and whatnot, have always tried to push the envelope as to where the meta is and where they think it should be. And I think if they get the more practices in per week, they'll be able to test that and really find where their niche lies.
Just to briefly shift topics before we talk about TBD, and speaking of where the meta should Void, where would you want to see the meta go? As in, what kind of sets would you want to see more popular, or what do you not want to see? I guess would be also a good way to put that.
That's a really good question. To tie into that question, I would say that the AT limitations has definitely helped shape the current meta and push it to, I think, a better place. I still do believe that blasters are doing way too much damage, and there's so much like residual damage after. Uh, you know, me being a stalker man, I would love to see a point to where teams could be running stalkers again in some type of fashion other than just knockback spikes. I would like to see more support being able to be worked in, whether that be thermals, sonics, kins, and just getting away from just M's and damage. I know Lib and I have had that conversation about like how can we work in maybe a Therm into a lineup and what kind of changes we can bring about to make these other ATs more or these other sets more beneficial. Giving them absorb components, giving them anti-jump components. Like, what can we do to like make these uh, stand out, but not completely mandatory? Like, if this thing's garbage in 99 ways, do we just want to run it for the one good thing it does? I don't think anybody would want that. But what other ways can we make these sets more viable for everybody, just to encourage more diversity?
Yeah, there's definitely been a lot of good talks on that, and I'd definitely like to see a way that we can make more viability, more a lot of counterplay too, and everyone's talking about, oh, Kins should negate the neg jump, things like that. It's definitely something I'd like to see explored. Um, make give a force field absorb component into their shields, stuff like that. Um, Definitely a lot of good ideas that have been tossed around. I mean, obviously we'd have to figure out balance and work with the devs to get something like that.
Yeah, I know. Like Renegades, they had Spike loves his bubbler, so if there was any like viable way to put that in there, I know he would. Renegades also ran Storm teams. They ran Mastermind teams. They're one of those teams that are very open to trying different things.
Um, TBD has only, I mean, from what I've watched on, Mez and Gore's streams when they do stream, I'm aware of the all offense on TBD, but have they done? Do they have like a full beam team?
They have a beam team. They have a full beam team. They have the teams that we've seen them run are their beam team and their fire team, which is their fire TA team.
Yeah, I've been pretty vocal about how I think Fire TA is not the way to go. Char, Blaze, Blazing Bull. I don't think it's a very good attack chain. It doesn't sync up well with each other.
How have the TBD scrims been? Because if I remember correctly, I know there was some frustrations on stream at the all offense team, and
TBD scrims are always pretty competitive. Uh, when it comes to like their all offense lineup, uh, we definitely feel that we can match it or we can beat it. And there's always like not to throw out excuses or anything, but whether there's issues with like who we have on hand or like what we have available,
yeah,
we don't feel like we had what was available to be able to beat it best. We've always afterwards we talk about like how we could have played it better or what's the best way to counter it, and we try different things, whether it's the turtle lineup or just the no countdown lineup or no countdown strategy of just taking it straight to them on our jump team and just keeping a better pace in them. We definitely feel that we can stay competitive with them even if they're running that all offense lineup. And I would definitely love to see that all offense lineup against Rare or against Renegades or Incursion as well, just to see how these other teams handle it compared to how Ori handled it.
Yeah, that was a interesting one to watch. Were those matches and week by week as it evolved, because like at first it completely caught you guys off guard, and you were having like a lot of difficulties with it. But now in the past week or two, you've you figured out two different strategies that work well for you. Be it your mastermind huddle, um, that secured some pretty decent wins in it, um, or the jump team just running at an extremely faster pace, removing countdowns, things like that.
Ideas to explore as well, whether it's dual spikes or just an even quicker pace or something. There's ideas on the table.
I mean, they don't even have Emps in that lineup, so theoretically you could just rogue against their roguing.
Yeah, you
Right.
rogue back and win.
Yeah.
Or you just split spikes.
Yeah, that was. I think the split spikes is probably the most solid way to like run up the score the most you could. Um, I think you can also go through target calling early on, no countdowns, swap back pretty quickly, or phase chase if they when they do phase, um, and run them completely out of greens, and then go into rogue strategy in the second half of the match when they have no greens, and then they just can't pressure you.
TBD is an interesting roster to look at too because it's like they have a lot of really old players and like a lot of really new players.
They have one of the most talented rosters out there.
I would definitely say that they have a very talented pool of players.
I don't know who shows up because I haven't been around, like I said, but assuming like on paper, if you just look at their roster, offensively, certainly, I think they're better than almost anyone on paper. In practice, I don't know. And then, I mean, I've heard really good things about Tansy Emping recently. Like I've heard he's really been like coming into form pretty well. And obviously, I mean, Spiner's Spiner. I don't know. Yeah, like I don't know how he's been adjusting to the new stuff or anything, or how much he's been showing up. But they have a team.
Yeah,
They have a really good team.
They have Hanta and Empa they need as well. They have MGB to Empa they need as well. Going down their roster, they definitely have a bunch of really solid players. They recently picked up Ajax, but they have Justin, Chris, Han, MJB, Aura. I don't know why I didn't say Aura first.
Yeah, Aura, Justin, Deadly, MJB, and Chris is like a really solid like 5-man off.
Womb's been playing really well too. As one of their offensive players.
Yeah, Womb, Deadly, Firewire. They have a lot of people that can fit that offensive lineup. So they wanted to run 8 offense. They have really 8 solid offensive players to run.
Yeah, they're another one that that just needs more scrim time. Get more matches out there, and they'll progress because I mean they have all the talent. They just need to
refine it.
Yeah, figure out how they're going to use that talent to maximize wins.
Yeah, because they've done a lot of like kind of random stuff in our scrims against them. One scrim in particular, they brought out a mastermind. Another scrim, they brought out I think it was a plant storm controller. Another scrim, they brought out Justin on a Sonic. So they're not afraid to try things either, even if the first time trying it is at the scrim.
They have thinkers on their team too, and like I mean they get along really well from what I've seen just hanging out on their Discord.
Yeah, they have a lot of chemistry. They have a lot of chemistry. They have a lot of cohesion as a team. A lot of strong personalities, though. I think that's like the most team way to say it.
So having covered all the teams now, and Boyd, you scrim against all the teams every week. Give us a ranking, just your opinion of where you think 1 through 5, I believe it is, the teams are.
Right. I would say when it comes to just how we've performed against these teams and like in what order that they've given us the most difficulty, Rare's at the top, followed by TBD, followed by Renegades, followed by. But that's only us against them and our experiences against them. We don't know how any of these, or I don't know how any of these teams would interact against each other, and how that would change it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's pretty much how you can only base it.
Yeah, but I will say that Incursion's getting really competitive really quickly, and week by week, they're closing the gap.
I definitely think the beam lineup really helped.
For sure, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see them play off against Renegades and TBD, because I like I said earlier, like I think the difference between 5 and 1 is incredibly small at this point. It's the closest leagues we've ever had. You go back to, at least from my knowledge, you go back to like the Freedom League. That was probably the closest we had before this, at least my experience, because at least we had competition between 1 and 2, between SMD and used to be good, and further down the line, like things, anyone could take a game off anyone. There's definitely times that teams that were considered in the middle of the pack were taking games or even entire sets off of top two. But this point that we're at right now is everyone's a contender for sure.
Yeah, just everybody took their experience from live, or if they didn't have experience before, like all their newfound experience now, and they just added to it. So everybody's just like so much better. I feel like our reflexes might be slower now in our older age, but the knowledge abilities definitely increased.
Yeah, I mean, and with City of Heroes, there's only so good. You can only get so good at the game. Um, there's not like that huge skill ceiling that you can see in like a lot of other games.
I would be interested to see or discuss who you guys feel are like the max goals of other teams. Though I know we talked about max goal like carrying Renegades or like contributing to Renegades. I don't mean to talk about just who like their best player is, but like who contributes in tangible ways to teams.
Okay. I mean, Pixel and Smalls, to finish off the dumb quartet. Um, those two for you guys are, in my opinion, that backbone. Absolutely wonderful players. Pixel is a phenomenal target caller. He's the most difficult to kill for us against you guys, just based on um, some of the statistics that I've done. Um, Smalls is incredibly versatile. She can be, your best blaster or your best emp whenever you need. So like picking, one particular person off Ori would be extremely difficult for me. But those two I could definitely say. For us, for Rare, it's obviously Lib. You know,
I think it's you.
I don't know about that. I think Lib is by far like the most important thing that we have.
I mean, well, like Rare, if we're going off like what Ware is like, what I mean, was like literally nobody on that team mattered, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
The team's just like, the team's pretty good. And I think roster wise, we're pretty similar to that point where there isn't really like any single player who's like, we just can't live without. I mean, people that's what's been like, playing on this team, if you have everybody here, it's like you can have an off game and other people are just gonna, make up for it. But I think you and Lib both have been like really involved in the absence of a lot of other people due to scheduling conflicts, working with kind of inconsistent rosters, in terms of like making lineups, all that. I'd say Ziggy too, actually, and like you, Lib, and Ziggy have probably been like, at least from what I've seen on the Discord, like the ones kind of holding it down while everyone else has sort of like been dealing with other shit outside the game.
I mean, that's definitely fair. The three of us have probably been the most active, making sure that the team basically doesn't disband. Um, and we definitely put in a lot of time. Like, obviously, I didn't give enough credit to Ziggy there. Ziggy is like the reason that people show up to scrims. Uh, he does a ton of work, and I mean, we all try to give our input, but I don't know. Lib is like that versatile role. We can have him play anything. He can target call, he can poison, he can amp, he can blast. He'll outblast me. Um, so uh, I don't know. For me, that's my pick because he plays like me, only better and more versatile. But yeah, I get what
I feel
you're
like you
saying.
guys play pretty different, but I guess I don't know. Maybe yeah.
Lib can play anything and then would just be the best at it. Like, he decided he wanted to roll a stalker one day and he became the best stalker in the game. And that's just how the dice roll.
Liv's not the best stalker in the game. Liv's just a really good player. That's the thing. Like, English just doesn't have one trick ponies. If you know how to like play an offensive thing, like I mean, a lot more about playing a stalker than he does. Like, what I'm saying? Like, you're more comfortable on the stalker when it comes to stalker mechanics. But because COH just isn't like that mechanically involved in the game, it's like you have to make that choice depending on what kind of lineup you run. Of like, do you want that specialist who really just understands that thing in and out, or do you want the guy who just like is gonna like have that greater understanding of like the purpose of the lineup and like what you're trying to do and like all that experience playing so many officials and all that kind of stuff. So It's
Yeah.
just like choice, There's situations where like you definitely want like a void or an unholy over somebody like Lib on a stalker, and there's probably situations on a stalker where maybe getting that finesse AS isn't such a big deal as it is just like being on a target and not dying or something like that. Just like simple stuff that you would take from blasting or any other thing. And it's like, okay, well then, Libs, like now for example, ASing is like you're ASing somebody that's held half the time or like knocked back or something. So it's like you really need that guy who's like a beast with the ASs. Probably not, not anymore at least.
I definitely agree with that. Just because, I will be the first to say that like being a stalker main definitely was to my detriment when it came to me playing all these other ATs because I had to learn a whole completely new different skill set when it came to like evading and inspiration management, raging and stuff like that.
Now.
Yeah, and now like and that's all stuff that Liv had already from his experience on support and blasting, and now he's just like adding a different skill set on top of it. So definitely agree.
Mastermind. Like Mastermind's probably the same way, where it's like I think Stalker and Mastermind are the two most unique kind of like ATs in the game in terms of like most things in the game. It's like if you can play one thing, if I can play a blaster, like you're not going to put me on a rat or a poison, and I'm just going to be terrible on it. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to be able to play it because it's like the same thing, really. Like you understand an offense, you can play an offensive character. And then if you understand an offense, you should probably be able to play a support character too, because it just kind of goes hand in hand. You're a better evader if you know how support works. So if you're a good evader, then you should be able to play support, vice versa. But with Stalker and them, it's like you have these unique skills like the microwing of the pets and the ASs and kind of the frame timing of all that kind of stuff. But after a while, like like I said, it's just there's lineups where it matters and lineups where it doesn't. Like me on an MM, do I know what I'm doing on an MM? No, like not even slightly. But do I know that if I'm playing nature, like what the nature needs to do? Yeah, I do. So like, it kind of makes up for that maybe, like my lack of knowledge on how to use pets and all that other kind of stuff.
And interestingly enough, in those two examples, like the detriment to playing those is pretty much the same. Because when you're a stalker or when you're an MM, you don't learn to be evasive and you play close to the ground. Whereas if you're a blaster or an offensive character, you're gonna be targeted a ton. You're gonna have to learn to evade, and you're gonna play higher off the ground. Um, so it's just gotta. But I think that's kind of what the difficulty was, the detriment for Void in going from Stalker to Blaster and Corruptor and whatnot. Um, and he's made that improvement. He's absolutely a phenomenal offensive player now, and he can still stalk. So he's just added more versatility.
He's just really open minded though. It's like his mentality, He doesn't get like set in certain ways. I feel like some other people might, where it's like, oh, like that's dumb, or like whatever. Like it's like, oh, they're only winning because they're playing like X or like Y. He's just like, oh, like that's how the game is now. So I gotta learn how to play like this. And then having that open minded, like even if you're like a really cocky player, like you can still be open minded, learning new things.
Oh yeah, like if you ever think that you're the best and that you can't get better, that's where you're gonna plateau. Um, I don't think anyone on our team, at least, has that kind of mindset. Um, I know I'm not the best. I know I have lots of room to improve, which is why I put in like so much effort. When we get done with scrims, I go spend like 6 hours watching bots because I want to find the ways that I can get better and help my team out.
If you ever do think you're the best, like you should be absolutely like, and you care about being the best, you should be absolutely terrified of not being the best, to the point where you're always just like looking for ways to get better still, even if you think you're better than everyone else. Like you should be looking at how other people play, because even if you're the best, chances are somebody does something better than you do, because there's not just like one thing in this game. So you like looking constantly at what other people are doing and try to take like the good things that they do and use them for yourself, or make them even better.
I have a closing question in case we want to wrap up, or I don't know what you want to do for the end of your decks, if you even have an end yet.
I think we're definitely wrapping up State of Scrims. We're gonna just go quickly through the rest because this is definitely going on pretty long. So go ahead.
Right.
I mean, my closing question on at least scrims, anyways, was Void. I don't know if you have any closing thoughts on scrims or things you want to see or improve upon, or something you'd like to, I don't know, change with how it's done, whether that's the days, times, anything?
Every team will have to basically balance their availability. I think at this point we need to start finalizing or start making some tangible race towards an end state, whether that be a one-off invitational type tournament or just setting up a league or ladder. Because I do feel that like if scrims get drawn out too long, then people will get burned out and lose interest if they don't feel that there's like an end state or a reason to continue doing scrims other than just to PvP and have fun.
Yeah, and that's actually something I have in my notes. Um, you know, where do we want this to go? But there's like double-edged sword to that too. If there is an end state, there's an end. Um, in all the previous leagues that we did on live, as soon as a league ended, um, there was just like a mass exodus, and it would take someone like Silt or whatever wrangling everyone back up to get another like league forming. Um, and like my idea that I had been spreading around, just to see how people thought would be like doing invitationals, doing one-off tournaments. Um, do like one weekend a month where all the teams face off, do like a round robin into a bracket, and then you can just be like, oh yeah, we were the PvP champions of November, we were the PvP champions of December, back to back, whatever.
Yeah. The hot dog invitational or whatever we want to call it for that tournament.
Yeah, that's a really good name. I'm all
Like a series of one-offs actually sounds pretty good.
Yeah, because then people don't people feel like they're at least working for something on the scrims, like you were saying, but it doesn't
Right.
give us like an end where just everyone's gonna leave.
It also doesn't
Right.
allow team a league that lasts like 3 months. Like you can't make a new team and join it. You know what I mean? Whereas if it's like, okay, you have this one tournament, it's like, oh, next time I can get my team together for it. You at least leave room for some kind of growth, hopefully, to happen that way, without having like the ladder format, which is nice, but at the same time, like it's just very. You only play like one or two different teams because you're not playing all the teams. You're only playing
It's
teams
very
like right above you or below you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that would lead into like my last point, which is, we can talk about it a million different ways, but like, how do we expand the community at this point? Or like, we know that there's not going to be like, just like a mass wave of new players. But like, how do we get older players back or get other people that may be on the fence of being interested in PvP to PvP?
People who are stepped up or people who are like kind of clicked up with each other need to kind of step up and get more of their homies into stuff, because I guess like actually going back to what Dex said, saying like, oh, after like every league, there's kind of a max exodus, then like,
Right.
it took someone like me to go in and like wrangle people up. Actually, like I only wrangled people up for like one league ever. And that wasn't even really, it was more like that shit was like kind of already happening. Like the people were there. It was just nobody was like kind of like pushing one forward. And I still had a ton of help from like Dex, Vex, Peril, Critical Cat helped out, Vinny helped out. I mean, there was like a lot of Sneaky Prophet helped out. It was like a lot of people just kind of coming together and putting it together. And then once the exodus has happened after that, like, and we'd come back. Like I was never the one involved in any of those leagues. They existed without us. Like the Champion League, the next Champion League, that one Freedom League that you guys did. Then there was another Freedom League after that I think Catalyst was the organizer of. So I think it just takes like multiple people kind of like it's a lot easier to try to put events together when you're not the only one doing it.
Right.
There's more stuff going. Yeah, there's like if there's more people doing it, more people are going to play because they're going to know both people. They might come out. It's not. It's like you said. It's not going to be that influx of like, just thousands and thousands of new players or something. But at least it kind of creates like a stable community.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Let's move to the state of kickballs. What's your thoughts on the current state there, Boyd?
We've definitely seen a lot of changes over the course of kickball. I know Vegetable and I had made that thread on the forums about different trends that we've seen over the last few months with, going from ice to side to beam to back to ice. Kickball is definitely in a weird spot with how many people aren't showing up on support. I think that's something that needs to be addressed. How we choose to address that, I don't know. Like, I don't know what the best way to get more M's involved are, or how do we keep these M's from getting burnt out because they'll show up for a few rounds, not like what's going on and then leave. I know when, like, there was like a million poisons and then the M to poison ratio was like 4 poisons to 1 M. That wasn't fun for anybody. So we floated the idea of like invite only kickballs. We floated the idea of like white teams to black teams. Floating the ideas of getting the more like the people on teams to like voluntarily sit out just to make way for people that aren't on teams yet, to get more out of their kickball experience. There's really no easy answer or one size fits all solution to it. It's just like what we as a community can come to an agreement on, like what the best way to proceed is, and make kickball healthy again. Because some people would just show for like one round at this point and do. I do, and I'll be the first to say that like I do enjoy like the one-off like small KBs. I think it's a way to like break the monotony of just like the regular kickballs. Just being able to just throw caution to the wind and play like however, with whatever rule set, with whatever powers. That's fun sometimes for me. I know not everybody agrees with that, but I personally enjoy those kickballs.
I wish that those small KBs, those one-offs, that outlet for you, um, would reduce the shenanigans in the regular kickball. But I'll just say it, like I'm extremely pessimistic about where kickballs are at. It saddens me to see the state that it's in. It's been going downhill drastically, in my opinion. Um, the constant roguing, and in particular on EMPs, be it experienced EMPs or even worse, people that are just getting into EMPing. Um, that's what I feel like has ran a lot of the EMPs away. And now we're seeing 24 people show up to kickball and only 2 of them are willing to play EMP. You've got people coming in, they'll do like one match of EMP and then they're just like, no, I'm not having that. That's awful. I mean, I tried to show up to kickball tonight, and I showed up and it was chaos already, and I don't think there were that many matches in. It's like it's not good. It's not in a good state, and I wish more people would step up to be good examples. A lot of experienced players are teaching a lot of these really bad habits to the new people, and then with the combination of the black team, and you know people just picking whoever they want, it it's created a snowball of negative play, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's just kind of meta induced right now too, or like system induced, where it kind of goes back to what you said about like what kind of changes we'd like to see. Definitely like echoing everything that Dex. I mean, because we've all talked about it at this point, so many times. Like, oh, add absorb shields to this. Like, basically, ways to keep damage in check because damage right now is just way too easy to do. So it makes things like roguing like so much more rewarded than they really should be, I guess. Um, 'Cause damage is just too easy to do right now. But aside from like systematic changes, I think to help kickball, I think like Void said, more people need to kind of like again step up and like start hosting kickballs on their on other nights or at other times, because you don't have to just show like on live it was just hey, we're doing a kickball, come through, it's really just kind of impromptu. So if more people do that, that'll kind of help, because you'll have more like different groups of people kickballing, and they'll kind of get their own little like pug groups together with their own sort of like unspoken rule sets or even spoken ones. You could do like kind of a newer player night sort of kickball, like oriented at like players who are sort of newer. I think we talked about this too, right? Where like if you're on a team and you fancy yourself a good player, there's kind of like an unspoken rule that maybe you don't play your main class in that, like you, unless it's EMP or something, you're just kind of helping people out. And it could be an organized thing where it's like you kind of get interest of X amount of new players and you get them together and you have sort of like 1 or 2 people who have some experience kind of coaching them during that night. Another thing I think you can do that'll actually really help out, that I would like to see done personally, would be the kickball nights we're doing now, at least one night, if not both nights, um, have it so that maybe like for the first 2 hours of kickball, you have a black team, and for the next 2 hours, you don't. Because what that would do is a lot of people who are maybe like disenfranchised with the idea of the black team or like kind of annoyed with it, they're going to show up later, and then those will be like more serious kickballs. And then you'll have like more casual kickballs earlier where it's like more inclusive. And then people will sort of want to be good enough to play in those later kickballs. So they'll start aspiring to play in ways that gets them picked in those kickballs rather than like, just doing stuff that wouldn't work in a game where people are actually good all around. There's not just like, inexperienced players that you can prey on and kind of exploit bad strategies on.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what the feedback is on that, because it's like I don't have the answer, but I'm open to trying that. That seems like a decent idea. The 2 hours and 2 hours kind of thing. Um, maybe people just emps won't show up for those early ones or something if the shenanigans are too bad there, and then that's on those people. Then you're just punishing your black team players, or the black team players are going to um, work harder towards um, the current design of PvP of actually getting on target, locking behind your target caller, um, and then when it goes to um, no black team, maybe people that are experienced right now that are taking part in shenanigans will straighten their act up so that they get picked.
Exactly that. Exactly. It's like, oh, okay, well, I'm actually going to pick this guy who you might think is way worse than you over you because I know he's actually going to like contribute to what I want this team to do in this kickball rather than like what you're going to do, which is just like, against actual like all around experience and competent players, just going to like derail our team and make us lose. And then if you have people who captain and they just pick all their friends instead of a good team, I think it's the other captain's like duty to just be fucking merciless, and like pick the best team that he can and punish the crap out of that other team for picking a bad team. And then you're like, all right, that guy's not captaining again for a while. Like, if you're just blatantly picking a team that isn't good and making like 8 people suffer for 10 minutes, 16 people really, because it's boring to roll people, you shouldn't be captaining. But that's in those later ones, like when there's no black team, like you can be like, okay, hey, like you can kind of monitor who captains a little bit better.
I like the idea of having the new people kickball night. I hope someone will step forward and be willing to do that. The way I would personally like to see it would be have 2 emps on each team that are experienced emps, or if someone's like trying to learn emp, um, obviously you can work them in instead, and then like one target caller on each team that's experienced, and then your other 5 are new people that want to learn, that want the experience, and just let them play each other. We coach them on the meta that we're currently playing. Doesn't mean it's the best, but if they're interested in learning that meta, then they have their opportunity.
Yeah, I think the only issue really with that too is it's like, are there really like 10 people who are gonna reliably like show up that are just like new players that aren't on teams? And like, what's the cutoff too? It's like, when are we just like, okay, bud, you're like not new enough for this? And then what are they? Because to fill that, you kind of need to fill up a team. So it's like, okay, hey, like yeah, you can show up, but just don't play something like too try hardy. What is that? What does that exactly mean? It's like, does he have to just come up on? Does he have to play a grab energy tom or something? Like, what what does he have to play that makes it okay? Because there's only 2 slots for. You can be like, okay, you have to play M, but there's only 2 slots for that, right? So you got to fill those other slots somehow.
I think that right now there is enough interest just by looking at like the black team from today. Um, there was enough people that were new showing up, and I think it's something that you have to basically be subjective on. Just be like, um, person X. I mean, you play on team Y. Like you're scrimming all the time. You're not a new player. I don't like the idea of you have to play off your main role. I think it'd end up too convoluted.
Yeah, it shouldn't be like a strict rule. It should just be kind of like the 2 people who are kind of running that, you know what I mean? Or like the team captains, so to speak, who are running it, or the more experienced players who are there. They just need to use their discernment to make even teams. It shouldn't be like a captaining kind of thing. Pick teams person by person. It should just be like, all right, let's make 2 even teams here, and nobody do dumb stuff, and like let's let these guys practice locking and evading.
Yeah, and then I mean, you pick the 6 people that are basically, or the 10 people that are basically newest, and put them in. If you can't fill up the teams, whatever, then you can bring in um, other experienced players and let them play. But just it's for the new people, you know.
The other issue though is like a lot of people I think aren't really. I don't know how many people are gonna like really. There's definitely people who will. I think a lot of people who are maybe newer or like less experienced or maybe like just less good at the game currently, which is a curable condition. You can get better at the game. Um, but like a lot of them just aren't really willing to throw themselves out there and be like, oh yeah, I'm bad, help me. Like I feel like a lot of people maybe
You don't have to be bad, just
don't
be
have
like
that mentality.
new. No, you like
Right.
if you're not playing on a team that's scrimming, um, you're basically, that's a kickball night for you. Um, captains get them in.
I would definitely agree with that. I would definitely like to see that, or how it would play out.
Yeah, I mean, we just gotta try stuff until we find something that's working. Because choosing not to try anything or not do anything is making a choice. Like
Yep.
you're deciding that this is okay, that our current state is a fine path to be on, and it doesn't seem like that from my perspective, but obviously that's a subjective thing. So let's move on to the state of zones. Um, I have not been in zones at all lately. So, Void, what's going on in zones?
What's the hap?
Zones really hasn't changed much as far as the zone meta, I should say. There's still the handful of melee players that, yeah, that fight club. They're the ones that die really easily, no matter what they play. And then you have like the super love rats who will never die, no matter how many people are attacking them. You have players that play. One thing that I should address is that TP bind or the TP to base bind or back. That did change zone somewhat, where you have a lot of people that are using that as a free escape tool, which is really frustrating because it's just like it's a very cheesy way to play, but there are really no like rules in zones. They're just gonna have to like enjoy it until it goes away.
Yeah, that's kind of what drove me away. Was that um, it created, I don't know. It seemed like terrible PvP at that point. As soon as you throw one attack at someone, they hit a bind and run away, zoom away to protection.
Right. And then you have the people that always play like in the most cheesy ways, whether it's just loading up on tier 3s or in some cases just like tier 4 inspirations will go there, pop a tray of rest, get one kill, and then go back to the base for their next kill. There's people with like their double phases and their double jetpacks and all that stuff. And really, like when it comes to zones, there's no like policing any of that. You play like however you play. It's like the Wild Wild West. It really shouldn't be policed, but it's not fun for everybody, and it's not everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah, that is a tough one because yeah, you basically just have to play by the rules that the game has instilled. You can't have
Right.
a code of conduct kind of thing. No one's gonna agree to
Yeah,
that.
and I don't agree with that. Yeah, like there's a lot of people that have self-imposed rules on themselves in zones, and I agree with those people even less. Like the ones that say that you shouldn't pop inspirations. I think all those people like are like limiting themselves because if and when they ever do decide to give arena PvP a try or competitive PvP a try, that's a completely different skill set that they're robbing themselves of, like bettering.
Yeah, I mean, I impose rules on myself when I go into zone. I basically play by arena rules, except for sometimes I'll use electrified net arrow, um, or even TK if it's on my
Wow, what
beam
a
store.
monster.
Yeah,
I remember the first time I went into zone on my BMTA blaster. It took me a good hour to realize that I had electrified net arrow, and then I had to put it back on my tray and start using it like consciously.
wow, it's such an overpowered ability. It's so good. But the way zones were um, when we like first came back, like before the teams really, started scrimming and separated from each other. Um, Zone was a lot of fun. I went in with a few guys from TBD before TBD was a thing, and I was facing off against um, like six guys from Rare, and it was a blast. Or like the Vori and Rare pickup groups in RV facing off against each other. Those were a lot of fun.
Yeah,
But
zones definitely were a lot of fun. Even in the earlier days, like I'm talking like the May days of Siren's Call, or before a lot of people even had or IOs, and you had your flying fire blasters with Char, you had a bunch of stalkers, you had BP and the rest of Extinction Agenda.
Yeah. For me, I feel like the earlier zone days were like
It's just so
they
much
were
fun.
fun, but it was also, I think for me personally, like it's kind of like rose tinted just by like the whole experience of being back with all your friends in a game you hadn't
Right.
played for a long time. So like it felt a lot better than maybe it was, because I didn't realize realistically like it was pretty terrible. Like because like Lib and I were just running around on like fully IO'd ice plants, and like
blasters.
nobody even knew that ice plant was good yet. We're just two shotting all these S hood people in the zone. Like that can't have been fun for anyone except us.
Yeah, but
Well,
we
that
did
was
all get to play
really
with our
early
friends.
on. Like that was well before like I had even came back that you guys were doing that.
But even like once zone kind of picked up more, once we were doing like actual arena stuff, like I personally seldom ventured into zone at all, just because I found it really personally, I just felt it was boring to me. It's really easy, really boring. I ended up just camping in like a chimney every time I went there, and like that was the only fun thing for me.
Yeah, I mean, like your mileage may vary. Like you decide what's fun for you, or like what's enjoyable for you. Like for me, I still find zones fun, just because I can go out there like solo on my stalker. Me against the world type of deal.
I really enjoyed getting beat up on my Dominator when Lib and I were in there as a Dom Stalker combo. That was fun.
And just like be able to dual stock with Liv or BP or Gore or Unholy or whoever. Like that's fun to
Double
me too.
stalking in zone is still pretty fun, probably just because I don't really stalk enough. I think so. It's like a different experience, and that's pretty fun to stalk in zone. But yeah, playing my blasters in zone was just like really like even like Leoparde after a while. Like once people started slotting knockback protection, like that just got really boring.
Yeah. So other than that, TP macro and like what that introduced to zone PvP. I mean, zone PvP is still popping. Like especially in Dom, like you can find PvP just like about any time of the day to like some extent. It's just
The
like I
zone
wish
macro's
those.
not patched yet though.
No, not yet.
Huh.
Yeah, it's just I do wish that some of those zone PvPers would start making their way to the arena, and some have. Pone's the biggest example of that, where she started off as a zone PvPer, now she's the co-captain of Ori.
Pone used to go to kickballs and do arena stuff though. Online.
Yeah, and Epsilon too. Epsilon is he's a big zoner, but now he's was scrimming with TBD recently. So just trying to get some of those other zoners into kickball.
Who's Epsilon?
Who is Epsilon? Great question.
Sub-Zero Epsilon is the blaster that you'll see in zone and like PFF. It's pretty hard to kill because he's pretty goddamn elusive.
Never heard of him.
Are you saying he should be a little bit more prolific?
I mean, I guess he could be. I've never heard of him.
Feel like this part's gonna be edited out.
Nope, keeping that in that part. But all right, I mean, we went through most of the stuff I wanted to go through. It went a lot longer than I anticipated, but we had we had people pop in. Ended up being a pretty good time, and hopefully in the future, we won't have to go through as much history for like things like State of Scrims. Like we were basically catching up on a month's worth of scrims on this one, but we'll be bringing in a different special guest each week, or however often we decide to do this. Maybe each month, because that's about how long it took to get this one going. So we'll definitely be bringing other people in to get more perspectives. Hopefully, other teams. There's definitely a lot of personalities in the community that I'd like to talk to, just to get their feel. Because I mean, I know how all the people on my team feel about things, but I don't want to stay in that echo chamber. I want to hear from everyone else, um, where they think we're at and where they think we should go and how we go about getting there.
What he said.
Very talkative, Dan. Very talkative.
Do I get to do a closing shout out to my entire team?
Absolutely.
This camera, or this camera, or this camera. Tell the people what you got going on.
Shout outs to Mez, Gore, Pixel, Pone, Seagate, Bolin, Bizarre, Stacy, Chaos, Johnny Wildfire, Nojio, Pub, Tempty, Web, and last but not least, Smalls.
What about VP?
Yeah, what about BP?
Hey,
Well,
baby.
I would like to give a shout out to the newest member of Rare, BP. Welcome to the team. We're really happy to have you. I think you fit in great with this group, and I'm excited to see what kind of progression you have. It's, sky's the limit.
Yeah.
Yeah, we think you're gonna fit in really well with those guys over there on Renegades. We traded you, by the way.
Oh, that
But
didn't take long. What did you get
Yeah.
from me at least? Anybody decent?
We got a washing machine.
a couple IOs.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
A happy tuna sandwich.
Some nightmare.
Did you at
fear
least get
items.
like half a purple?
We got a full
Gift of the Ancients plus run speed.
Oh, hell yeah. They at least gave you + 5 on it, right?
No.
On the proc.
Damn.
It's a proc, you idiot.
Who let this guy in here?
This is why he got traded.
I gotta go.
Well, thank you everyone for showing up. Thank you for participating. Thank you to those that listened in the Discord, and to those that ended up listening to the podcast on YouTube. If there's a positive reaction to it, we'll make more.
And if there's not, war shades still suck.
True that. Earth for humans. And if there is a negative response, we're going to do it even more often because that's the type of people we are, right, Dan?
I'm all about it.